Thinking about self-publishing and don't know where to start? Join the Spa Girls each week for 30 minutes of honest advice, tips and resources. I'm Trudy J and I am here with Cheryl Phipps.
Hi there.
Shah Barrett.
Hello.
We are without the lovely Wendy today. She's off skiving about in Japan doing exciting things. But instead of Wendy, we have an amazing guest. This week we have Skye Warren.
Yay!
Hello. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
I'm so excited to be here.
We're super excited to have you, Skye. I'm just a total fangirl of yours, and I think, you're amazing. So I may just kind of freak out at several points during the interview. Don't worry, just keep going. So I'm just so everyone can hear. I'm just going to read the bio first, and then we're going to go straight into the interview. But just so everyone understands how amazing Skye is, I'm going to read it out. Skye Warren is the New York Times best-selling author of dangerous romance, with over 1 million books sold. Her author business started as a 5-figure struggle with long hours and a constant fear she wouldn't make enough to pay the mortgage. Investing in marketing and Facebook ads is what transformed her business into a 7-figure salary, working 4 hours per day. She is the organizer of the Romance Author Mastermind conference, which the Spa Girls are very excited about going to in November, is a Facebook advertising guru, and the writer of amazingly inspirational and educational newsletters for authors, which you can access by signing up at her website. She makes her home in Texas with her loving family, sweet dogs, and evil cat. So welcome.
Thank you.
So we've got a few things that we want to cover off today. We may just all be talking really, really fast for this interview. We'll see how we go. But first of all, can we just start off with a little bit of background about you, Skye? Like, what made you decide to write? How did you get into the genre that you're in? That kind of, your backstory, basically.
Right. So I actually was, my background is in computer science, and I was a programmer, and that was kind of how I started. And the funny thing is, my computer science teacher in high school told me, like, this is a great field for women to get into because has so much job flexibility. And so as it turned out, it didn't have as much job flexibility as I wanted. So, so after I had my son, that was actually when I discovered the romance genre. I didn't know about it before then. Previously, I just went to like the sort of general fiction section and like peeked at the back without trying to spoil anything to make sure people weren't dying at the end. And so once I found the romance genre, I knew that I was home, and this is, kind of the books that I was meant to like read and write. So I first published at the end of 2011. I self-published, and right at the beginning, I didn't really know if it would be a career. In truth, not that many people were talking about money at the time. I think even to a certain extent, that's true now in terms of actual amounts. And so it wasn't even possible to me. It wasn't even known to me whether it was possible. Like, was it a full-time career? Was it not? What was kind of the median range that people were making? So I went into it completely blind. In some ways, that's good because I wasn't restrained by anything. And generally speaking, though, I think information is power. So I try to be transparent when I talk to authors. Even though sometimes it is hard for me to talk about money. We were raised very much, you don't talk about it. So that's my background. And I write contemporary romance. I've also been known to write dark romance. And the way that I characterize it now is actually dangerous romance.
Which I really love. I love the dangerous romance.
I love the word dangerous for a lot of reasons. I mean, the sort of the easiest answer as to why is because I always have some kind of suspense subplot. I can't help but write something in because I just enjoy it so much. But the other reason is that I've had my dark romance books be categorized as dangerous for women. And so I've kind of, it wasn't meant as a compliment, but I have taken it as one, and I own the term now. And so I like to think that my books are dangerous for women, but the women that, read my books are, really smart and they like a little danger. So there we go.
I totally didn't take it in a bad way. I was like, that's a great tagline in a completely positive way. Yeah, that's cool. So we wanted to talk a little bit about time for authors, because you had you've had basically something happen in your life that has kind of forced you to kind of be really focused on time, I guess. It's maybe not quite the right way to say it, but
Right.
but you only write 4 hours a day, and it came out of necessity, but it's taught you some valuable lessons. So could you kind of talk about that? Can you explain what I'm trying to fumble through?
Yeah. So since I was working in like a 9 to 5 corporate job, I was working 40 hours a week, and then I had my son. And then so I'd work all day, I would spend time with my son, and then I would put him to bed, and then I would be able to write. And so, you put in these long hours, and I think a lot of us do that. A lot of us have a day job and a family, and we have multiple responsibilities at a time before writing is possibly earning enough to support us.
Yeah.
So I had all that. Then I started writing full time, and that went well for a while. I put all of my time then into writing and the business side of things. So that meant 8 to 10 hours a day. And it really happened so suddenly that, I would say over the course of a couple weeks, maybe a full month, where I started slowing down to the extent that I was sleeping 18 hours a day. The time that I was awake, I was dizzy, which if you have dealt with dizziness, it's just the worst. You can't think, you can't sit at a computer, you can't. And so it was really hard for me. I had always been someone who was go, go, go. I had always liked to work. I enjoy it. And so it was confusing. It was frustrating. The other thing about health, and I would say, statistics show even women's health in particular, is that when there's not a clear answer right away, the doctors sort of say, we don't know what it is. Maybe are you making it up? Like that's kind of how the next step. Like this one test didn't show what it was, and this is the one test that I run as this kind of doctor, and so therefore, and so I, over a period of 2 years, really went to doctors until I finally found one who was a neurologist, and she said, I don't know what it is, but try this and then come back. And then, and it's such a simple thing, but it was so powerful for me at the time because really no one had said that until that point. And so it was a combination of things. It was a pretty severe vitamin deficiency. That was sort of the easiest thing to fix. And by easy, I mean that I had to give myself injections of B12 daily. So that was not exactly easy, but at least it was fast relative to this overall thing. And then it was a pretty severe treatment-resistant depression. And so that has been ongoing. And so every time, I find something that helps and I'll feel, I'll get to the next level of being more regular like I used to be, but there's still a ways to go. And so during this time period, when this really started happening, we already my family depended on my income to pay part of the bills. My husband works and, but it was both our income that covered our expenses. Mm. And so we didn't have a huge amount of, family support. We have some family, but they work too. So there really, when this started happening, there wasn't other options. Like it wasn't like we lived in a really modest house at the time. We had older cars. There wasn't a way that I could just sort of pay someone to cook for us or pick up my child from school even, and all of that required money as well as, just the regular bills that we would have had before this started. And so I remember sitting down at my computer every day. I would wake up around, 10 after 12 hours of sleeping. I would still be tired and feel like there was basically an elephant sitting on my head. And I would sit down and I would say, okay, I would tell myself, you're going to have to, lie down in 2 hours. Like your body is going to make you. And I've never experienced that before. I was not someone who could ever nap or nap in school or do anything. So it was a completely new experience. And, my body would physically shut down on me. And so I told myself, this is going to happen. But you're upright for 2 hours, give or take. And so what can you do during this time? Like what is going to make enough money for your family in these 2 hours. And
Wow.
so that's when I learned Facebook ads, and it was really do or die.
Wow.
And so I went like that for a year. And at the end of the year, I looked back at what I had made, and it was more than I had made in previous years, more than I had made before.
Wow.
And I just could not think, I was thinking, what was I doing with all those hours before? Because, I already know it wasn't Facebook ads, but still,
Sure.
so,
Yeah.
it was like so many hours that I was spending and spinning my wheels apparently, and I didn't realize it. So since then, I have reached a level through a series of things, which I don't particularly talk about as much, but, it's just relevant to depression, and have tried a lot of different treatments, some of which have helped and some of which haven't. And I have about 4 hours a day right now. If I try to do more, I can. Like if I get to 4 hours and I think I'm actually enjoying this, I like it, I can continue working for 6 hours, and then the next day I sleep the entire day. So I have I've had to learn my limit is that you need to stop at 4. And I've continued to grow my business, every year. So, and last the first year that I actually crossed 7 figures.
Yeah, that's amazing. And that's,
and so
I was going to say, you kind of talk about how you say to people that you work 4 hours a day, and it's kind of met with disbelief. But can you talk about that a little bit? Like you mentioned, and I'm getting this from your newsletters, but you talked about how that it's not necessarily how much time you spend, like someone who's earning lots of money versus someone not so much. It's not the time, spending more time on the business isn't going to make them more money necessarily.
Right. And I feel like we kind of understand that, like when an author is just starting out, or maybe they haven't really done much marketing, but sometimes they even have a backlist and, they aren't making much. Maybe let's put an actual number on it. They're putting, they might be working very hard and earning $20,000 a year. And, and then you look at an author who's making, who's maybe hit their groove, they have a fan base, they're doing very well, and they're making $600,000 a year. That the person who's making $600,000 a year is not working, 10 times as many hours.
Yeah.
Like that wouldn't even be possible, because the person making only 20,000 is actually, could be doing 40 hours of work. Mm-hmm. So it's like, we get it. When you look at those two extremes, that it's not an equation where time equals money, right? And so,
but we kind of think it is, though, right? Like we've got it stuck in our head that if only
exactly. But when we look at those two people, we know, that the author who's making $600,000 a year is just doing something different with her time, because she doesn't get more time than the author making $20,000. Yeah. So that it's kind of there, but it's also something that we have been taught that time is money, and so. This comes into play a lot when authors talk to me about Facebook ads, because they'll say, I really don't have time. And so what I try to share is that, if you're doing something that isn't moving the needle forward, that isn't having a measurable ROI, then you're sort of losing money when you could be doing something that does have a measurable ROI. So, there are definitely authors who can easily work 8 hours a day, 10 hours, 12 hours, and maybe they're at a place in their life where they're excited to pour that kind of energy into their business. And I definitely don't recommend against that. But the idea is still to start pouring where it makes the most sense, if your time is limited. And so you fill up things that have clear and large measurable ROI, and then you can move on to things that are just a little bit more hazy and that you aren't sure about. I say this also for money. So there are authors who refuse to spend money on ads. They'll refuse to spend money on Facebook ads or AMS ads, but then they'll say, oh, I'm going to send, an auction basket over to this conference or something, or I'm going to spend my money on a banner ad at RT, which doesn't exist anymore, but, a different conference. And so they're willing to spend money on marketing, but it's almost like there's something in there a little bit with sort of the money mindset, which we'll talk about soon, but that makes us almost go for the things that we know won't have returns, so that we won't have to see it. So the one thing about Facebook ads and also AMS ads is that they're very immediate. You can see a result or you don't. And it can feel very discouraging to authors to put in $100 into Facebook ads and not see that return in sales. But that same author might spend $500 on a banner at a signing that might have zero return, but it just didn't feel as immediate. They didn't see the numbers.
Yeah.
So
do you think that's a fear thing? People are kind of more comfortable doing something where they don't have to worry about the ROI versus...
Right. It's, that would be a certain kind of fear of failure. Like if you don't know, that feels safer than finding out for sure. I think, with writing too, there's definitely a little bit of the art and money thing, in play where to a certain extent, I think the industry has come a long way, but to a certain extent, there's still that romanticizing of the starving artist. So even as we sort of shed that and we move to a place where we say, no, I'm a businesswoman. I would like to make money for my family. We can say that out loud, but all those little assumptions have like burrowed into our mind and, and make us do things like that, like spend on things that don't have return. And,
And it's fascinating when you come to a point and you have no choice. You have to earn the money. You've got a limited time frame. You make those hard decisions. But when you don't have those, you've got all hours in the day and you don't have those restrictions. Is there a way for an author to just make those decisions, or do you just have to kind of know it and just sit down and just do it?
Right. So, and it's funny because I do have some authors who come to me and they say, I want to learn Facebook ads. I want to maybe earn more. And I'll sort of say, okay, here's one thing you can do. And they say, no, I don't want it that bad. And so I think it sounds really simple, but you got to want it, and you got to want it pretty bad. And I actually do think that there's a lot of authors doing what I'm doing in terms of putting in relatively minimal time for the income that they're making, because there are a lot of women who are not only primary caregivers for their children, but also for like elderly family members. And so there are these, ways that we, and those people don't always come out to a platform and speak on that and share on that. They just sort of do it. And so I personally love that our industry and our career choice gives us that flexibility. It's really one of the few out there, I feel like, to a certain extent. And, and even at times, when authors say, they're struggling, they are having, maybe their family does need more of their time, they take a step back from writing, and then it continues to earn you money. I mean, it's less money than when you're spending full time. So, I look at those things as kind of a blessing, is that we do have control over what we earn when we're paying attention, and then we continue to earn more than zero when we need to take a break.
Because what's really interesting to me about what you've done is that you said somewhere that none of it was something that you didn't already know that you had to do. Like, it wasn't new stuff. It wasn't out of the box things that you did. You knew you had to do them. You just hadn't done them before. And then once you did them, because you kind of knew that was what was going to get the revenue.
Right. So that was the interesting thing. And I've definitely sort of seen that too with Romance Author Mastermind, which is an intermediate and advanced level of event. And, I think that there's definitely authors who stand up there and say, this is my technique, this is my tools, this is my strategy that you've never particularly seen before. But I think a lot of it is just seeing, okay, this author, super successful, standing up here and saying something, then the next one, then the next one, then the next one. And it really drives it home. Okay, wow. If they're pretty much all doing something and I've been telling myself excuses for why I can't do that, then I just need to get over that. And that's like, it's really so powerful. And, even to a certain extent with ads, like I'll say, okay, well, do an image this way. And they'll say, okay, well, I certainly can't do it that way, but here's the closest thing. And there's all these ways that we sort of come up with, like, this reasoning and this sort of false logic that is so seductive. I always use that word reasonable. Like, it feels so reasonable when we're giving our excuses to ourselves.
Yes.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
we've never been more reasonable than right now.
Yeah.
And
It's so true. It's the same with self-care, though, isn't it? It's often until a health crisis or whether it's physical or mental health crises that we actually take time to do the self-care thing, as particularly as women, I think, generalizing here. We know what we should be doing, but often we just kind of think we can soldier on,
Right. So actually, I'm recording this from Canada, which is not where I live, but I was just at a writing retreat, and I'm flying back tomorrow. And one of the authors, who's a good friend of mine, we were talking about this student of mine from the Facebook Ads Intensive last year, and she has done amazing. She was making 4 figures, like a low 4 figures. When she took the class, she's now making high 5 figures. It's I'm sitting here emailing her, taking notes. It's so amazing what she's done. And she just threw her, that's, I think, the one defining factor of what she did is she just threw herself wholeheartedly into what she was doing. She didn't have long, thinking periods, which thinking periods are sort of like stalling tactics. She just did this and then did this and then did this, and it's just snowballed in an incredible way. And so I was talking to my friend, and she was like, that's the part that really gets me, because, my friend was saying, because she took my class, so she had the same information, but didn't have the same results. And so what is it that is the difference between taking action and not taking action? And as someone who, it is sometimes speaks and sometimes give classes, is definitely an area of interest to me. To a certain extent, someone has to be ready. They have to be ready to do it. And that's kind of why I said they have to want it. It's, I actually did, it was maybe over a year ago or something. And I had offered this, sort of consulting phone call if you donated to charity. And so it was like one-on-one. And so I did this call with someone, and she said to me, I'm completely in your hands. I am ready to do what you advise. And, she had been following me for a while, and I was like, okay. And so, tell me what you've got going on. And then I say, okay, well, here's, based on what your backlist is, and, here's what I think would be a great plan for you going forward. And she heard it, and she said, yes, okay, I see your point. And, maybe I have my writing schedule planned out for like 2 years, but maybe then I could do what you're saying.
Oh, no.
And so I just, I don't know what's going to happen in 2 years, but, so you have to be ready, and you have to, really, there's a quote that I really like. It's, the quote is, your new life is going to cost you your old one. So we don't really think about, we think about the things that we want, but we don't necessarily think about the things we have to give up.
Yeah.
Typically there are these ideas more than anything, these ideas in our head of what we just, I'm not that kind of person or something. And sometimes when we say them out loud, it almost feels silly because we're not thinking them out loud to ourselves. They're just buried deep.
Yeah.
It's all about being open to opportunities, isn't it? It's it's trying to see the big picture and not how you've, because what's that saying? If you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always got. So
right,
you really,
exactly.
You've got to try new things.
And that's what you also talk about, like the loss. Like, actually, when you decide that you're ready to move forward and take on these challenges and learn Facebook ads or do whatever, you're actually going to have to give up something, which is kind of what you said, but, or maybe you didn't say it. I can't remember who said it to me, but it was, you have to accept that there's going to be a bit of loss there. You lose out on some stuff, but you gain so much more when you do that.
Right. So, when I sort of was forced to work 2 hours a day, a lot of the stuff that we take for granted that we're going to do, I could not do. So even, the biggest example that I think is the most clear is email. Most of us sit down and check our email first. Maybe we check our email multiple times during the day. And, when I only had 2 hours to work, there was no time for email. That email could take 2 hours on its own and it would have zero profit. So that was out. And there's some fun stuff that happens in email. Like there's some stuff that even does move the needle forward in terms of group projects or whatever. But they're more uncertain, and I could not find the time to do that. I couldn't join a group not knowing if maybe there would be too much discussion for me and I would, be the weak link. I couldn't reply to friends. And so, and really when you think about it, we almost take that for granted that you should be able to chat with your friends on Facebook, chat with your author friends on Twitter, chat with them on email. And we call that work time, but that's not really work time. That's social time. And, certainly social time has its value, but it's not the same as work time. And so I do recommend anyone who's sort of looking to sort of save time is split those up so you at least have a clear idea. If you want to spend 2 hours a day on social time, that's great. But then say to yourself, thank God I have a job that lets me spend 2 hours a day on social time, versus spending 8 hours refreshing email, Facebook, Twitter, and then saying, God, that was a hard day. And then, sales don't rise. So I definitely recommend splitting them just so you have that clarity. And once you start splitting them, once you really start looking at what actually increases revenue, there are a relatively limited number of things. And some people actually will say it's only writing. But that's not true. That's the one thing that I think that my career has disproved, because I don't write faster. I actually write slower now than I did before. I write less books now and make more. And so I feel, just from a logical proof standpoint, it is disproved because that wouldn't be possible if writing was the only thing that increased profit. So
Can I ask how many books you are putting out in a year, Skye?
So right now, for the past, I would say, couple years, and this year as well, I plan to put out 4 books, and each one is about category length. So they're about 50,000 words.
Wow. Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I think I reached a point where I was 5 or 6 of those length books and maybe 2 30K novellas or something was maybe at my height.
But 4 books, when people are talking many more, sometimes a year, 4 books is absolutely amazing given the time span that you're offering to write them, as well as the marketing.
Right. And
That's
I've
huge.
actually even talked to my husband, and I've said to him, I think that it's actually backwards from what some people say. I think I could write a 5th book this year, and I would definitely not increase my income by the percentage, you know what I mean, of how many books I had. I'm not even sure it would be that huge, because once you do reach a point where readers start saying, even at my pace, even at 4 books a year, readers start saying, I got the last one, I'll check the next one. I read her last series that just ended, I'll skip this one and start that. So, because readers are... It's not that they don't like to read a lot of books by an author. It's that they sort of like to read them all at once. So I can pull in a new reader and get them to read my whole backlist, which is great. But these sort of super fans who are in the groups and stuff, they are just inundated. And so, I think the pace that I'm at is really great. I don't think I would capture their attention to try to squeeze in another one, actually.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. It's great.
I think there's an awful lot of people listening out there that are breathing a giant sigh of relief right at the moment. Because so often the conventional wisdom is to make more money, you need to be publishing a book a month kind of thing. And that just can often seem just an impossible
working
task.
7 days a week. Yeah.
I know. And it's some people must assume that I've got stock in Facebook, which frankly I should. Actually, this is a good idea. I should, but I guess I do in a certain unconventional sense, in the respect that I run a lot of ads, and so when people are saying I don't have time for Facebook ads, I'm thinking to myself, I'm looking at what I do, which is at this point the only things that I reliably do in a given month is write and do Facebook ads. I may do other things. I may not. they may change from month to month, but the only thing that I'm for sure doing is writing and doing Facebook ads. And I know how much they bring in. If you just think about what is the low end of what I could be making with 4 books a year, right? Which is pretty low. So I know how much that's bringing, and I'm thinking I can't afford not to do Facebook ads, really.
And that's a valid point, right? That we have all these ideas and things that, oh no, I don't have time, I don't have the patience, I can't learn it or whatever. But like, do you have, you need to if you want to start making some decent money. Hey, now I'm just going to say that we've reached 30 minutes, and I know that we are we've got loads more to ask you about, Skye, but I think maybe we'll do it in a part 2 if that's okay with you, and we'll end the interview now, and next time we'll come back and talk a bit more about Facebook and kind of leveling up and Facebook ads, leveling up, and a bit around mindset. So join us again next week, but for now we're going to disappear and say farewell to you all. So,
and we're going to say Skye Warren's website is at Skye Warren, Skye with an E, Warren with an E .com, and Spagirls Podcast. We're all over the interwebs.
Excellent, thank you, Shah, and see you all next time.
Bye. Keep well.
Bye.